Thank you for joining the Infrastructure Network. Today, we have a special podcast where we talk with Jack Phan, the CEO of AirDeck Co. Jack shares his entrepreneurial journey and the lessons he learned from his father, who started an upholstery business after immigration to the U.S. Jack discusses the challenges his father faced as an entrepreneur and the importance of building strong customer relationships. He also talks about experience in the tech industry and how he became involved in AirDeck Co. Jack explains how AirDeck Co is revolutionizing digital communication by allowing users to narrate presentations and documents, track engagement, and purpose. He shares his vision for the future of AirDeck Co and the role of AI in enhancing communication on a global scale. Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe, follow, and enjoy the podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I'm your host. Today's guest is Jack Phan, who's the CEO at AirDeck Co. Thanks for joining me, Jack.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad.
Jack, you're an entrepreneur. You've been in this world of business for a long time. What made you get into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, no, I mean, entrepreneurship was something that kind of, I grew up with my dad. When we immigrated to the U.S. From Vietnam, he was always one of those people that always wanted to create things and take care for his family, right? He wasn't willing to accept status quo, wasn't willing to accept working for someone else, and really wanted to build a business that could help take care of his family, right? And I watched that growing up. I watched my dad's entrepreneurial spirit. He built an upholstery shop, took care of people to, recover their furniture and whatnot. And so for me, that's always been in my blood. But I went to school for medical and was going into optometry and physical therapy as a fallback. But on the medical side, it was fine. But I've realized it was the mid 90s and I had this passion for technology and innovation and computers. And so I took advantage of that as a hobby to create tech, right? And back in the early mid 90s, I created kind of a matching algorithm for homeowners and contractors. And from there, we took that and raised $26 million in VC funding and grew the company to 300 employees, and then ultimately sold that to ServiceMagic, which became HomeAdvisor. So that was my first taste of entrepreneurship, and it became something that I was like, this is fun. This is passion driven. I love building businesses. I love being able to help others, and excel in their careers and develop, skills for myself as a leader as well. So that was my first taste into entrepreneurship. I went on and, developed other businesses as well. But that's kind of my passion for entrepreneurship.
Well, that's no easy task. I'm sure ServiceAdvisor was acquired by Angie's List at some point in time, I believe, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So HomeAdvisor and Angie basically are the same company now, and it's under Angie's stock ticker. But they're great companies. From what I created back in the day of just matching homeowners to contractors, and to where it is today, it's fantastic to see how it's grown.
It is fantastic, man. Kudos to you for starting it. That's amazing. Just trending in that direction where we can provide value to consumers. Getting our homes remodeled, repaired. So great job starting something that was is revolutionary still to this day. People are using it, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it was very interesting of how I grew that business, funded, and then went on and actually started a second business very similarly. But I bootstrapped my second business as an entrepreneur, which was very gratifying because when you raise capital, you're working with investors and you're growing at the pace they want to grow. And at the end of the day, you have successes, but your ownership, your equity is diluted quite a bit. So it was very satisfying second time around when I built my true business that I feel like I had the most success and most fun in is what's called Reliable Remodeler. And we built that business, grew that over the course of 7 years to Inc. 500's 187th fastest growing company in America. And we ultimately sold that business to Quinn Street. So, some things I learned from the previous business to that business was just taking advantage of technology, innovation, finding new ways of doing old things, and having an opportunity to leverage Google search and buying keywords for pennies, at that time, and generating leads for dollars and reselling those to contractors for tens or hundreds of dollars at a time. So it was a great business, great model, lead gen business that really I enjoyed building. The great people that are still there working for Quinn Street. So.
That's very cool. Just to understand that and how you've built your second startup from bootstrapping, which is very challenging. I'm in the same boat as kind of similarities with what you're doing and have done, I should say, have done in the past. So very, very interesting. So going back to your father, started upholstery, right? Fixing upholstery with the furnitures is it for
Yeah.
homeowners, or was it just commercial? What was that?
Yeah, it was for homeowners. It was very interesting. So, I mean, I'll tell you a little bit of backstory, and just to add this little carrot of excitement to this podcast. But
Yeah.
when I, my we grew up in Vietnam. My dad was a high-ranking official for the South Vietnamese Army, and when after the war, he hid out in the jungles south of Vietnam, and eventually my mom met up with him, had me, and then we left on a refugee boat months later. So I was an infant at that time when we left on a refugee boat. We ended up getting robbed and by pirates twice, and I was kidnapped by pirates. So you want to take that story even further?
Wow.
So the adversity that I had to go through before I eventually was reunited with my parents was something that the story my dad would tell me all the time. Right, this is the adversity that we face, and this is how we overcame those. So watching him as we came to the U.S., the adversity was, he can collect food stamps and get government help and go to school and learn English and maybe go work for some company. And he was like, that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for him. And he
Right.
said, I wanted to figure out something that I can do. And again, he's in his 40s, right, at this time, coming to America in a new language that he doesn't speak with kids. By the way, I'm 15 of 16 children. So, so he's thinking about who he's taking care of, how he has to support not just the kids that came to the U.S., my sister and I, but the family that was left back in Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
But so he saw this upholstery school that was teaching people how to become upholsterers, and he borrowed $5,000 from the church and decided to go learn how to upholster furniture. And then he went out and started to work for someone to learn the trade, and eventually went out and just created his own business and said, you know what, I can do this. I can attract the customers. I can be authentic and pure with what my intentions are, which is to help them recover their furniture. He has an artistry to him to make things look beautiful. And so he wanted to take that to the customers and really built a great business, loyal business of people who would come back repetitively to get their furniture recovered. And the word of mouth that really transpired from the story that he would tell with his broken English, which is, we came from Vietnam. We are trying to find ends meet, but, I have a passion for turning old things new, right? And
Yeah.
upholstery was really his passion for where he has been in his entire life to where he ended up. It was a dramatic shift and change, but it's the entrepreneurial spirit. Like, he always taught me, take care of your customers. If they want something, figure out how to make it work for them. And at the end of the day, you'll succeed if you take care of the customers. So it's a fantastic business that he built. He passed away a couple of years ago, but rest his soul, he made it to 90 years old and really had a great life and raised some great kids. And I'm proof of that. So.
Jack, what an amazing story. Wow. You were captured by pirates. That was the most, I was like, wait, what? So, how much of that do you remember? How old were you?
No, I wasn't even 1 years old. So for me,
Oh,
I
okay.
came to the U.S. on my first birthday. So a lot of
Wow.
that is stories that he's telling me, my mom telling me back as well. It's just kind of the challenges that we had to face just to get
Yeah.
to America, and the hard work that we put in now is just a reflection of what we had to overcome and turning that adversity to an advantage. How can we take that? And he took that. He told the stories of where we were and turned that into a business that allowed him to really connect with his customers, with the audience that he was going after. And again, these are all things that I didn't think about at that time. Now in my career and having been through all these businesses, I can look back and say, God, that guy was a genius for what he did.
Yeah.
Really, how he was
Yeah.
able to do that.
And what a wow! That's just an amazing story of your family and how you got here to America. And were you a part of helping him with the business at some point in time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I say he came here in his 40s, so his English was never great, right? But
Yeah.
for myself and my sisters, we helped with the business a lot. So we would help
Okay.
translation. I'm bilingual because I was forced to know both languages very fluently. I can listen to one side and my mouth can speak the other very very quickly in Vietnamese and English. But
Nice.
I would help customers, like helping them pick out their fabric. I would translate things from that my dad would say to customers, and so I would learn how his approach was in talking to customers. And I worked with these customers to make sure that they were paying their invoices. And I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years old. That's where I was when I was helping him kind of develop this business that he had. So my sisters
Yeah.
and I, we all contributed after school and on the weekends and did whatever we could.
To be able to learn that with stuff you're never going to learn in college, first of all, customer service like that, and just to be able to interact with clients, customers like you're talking about at such a young age is so valuable to what you've achieved so far in your entrepreneur world. I can only just tie it all together, right? So that is a truly inspiring way to just coming to America and just being able to actually live the dream that people talk about, in a certain aspect, right? That's a lot. That's great. And so,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges your dad faced? Because everything was probably not that easy. Because I mean, there's a lot of challenges when you do businesses, in overcoming the language barriers that you're talking about. Were there other challenges that you guys had to overcome?
Absolutely. And, I think, Vietnam is a culture where, where it's blossomed today is really in the entrepreneurship. People will turn, their an opportunity into a business anywhere and everywhere. Every street corner, if you have real estate to be able to sell water or, pump air into tires or, sell fast food or do whatever, there's this entrepreneurial spirit there. Here in the US, there's a lot of red tape, which my dad found out very, very quickly. So you
Ah,
can't just buy a house that's on a busy road and turn it into a business. There's residential zoning and commercial zoning. My dad didn't know that, and he would face lawsuits and people complaining that, hey, this guy's running a business out of his home, right?
yeah,
And so we had to navigate that. There were challenges in the language barrier, right? And it's fascinating how much my dad was able to do with the limited English that he had, right? And that a lot of that
yeah,
was because my obviously my siblings and myself were able to really help with that process. But I look at what I'm doing today and the businesses I've been involved with today, and I just don't know how he was able to do that
yeah,
as effectively as he did with the language barriers, with the red tape of running a business. We had signage that was up that was apparently too big for for residential zones, right? We had to change. My dad tried to create parking, and so he got rid of the grass in front of our house to add concrete so that people could park in front of our house to pick up and drop off furniture. Well, that became an issue because residential zoning required that there be the trees or grass in front of our house. And so like these were things that I remember growing up. I'm like, gosh, it sucks to try to be run a business if you don't know all the laws and all the rules and all the red tape that comes with it. And again, he somehow figured things out, and but a lot of challenges for sure as being an entrepreneur in a new country, speaking a second language in his 40s.
yeah. Well, I can only imagine back then, overcoming that bureaucracy of within I would assume a small town, maybe that you guys lived in. I don't know exactly. Did you
Yeah,
mention
Portland,
what
Oregon. Yeah, well,
Portland?
Portland,
Okay,
Oregon. We
big
grew up in
town.
Portland.
Sorry,
Yeah,
big
so
town, but still
I
same
mean,
stuff.
it's a
Bureaucracy.
small city feel. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it definitely has a city feel to it. But back then, the city was still figuring things out. I believe. Very
yeah,
small. It's much bigger now, but back then, I mean, I grew up in Portland in the late '70s and early '80s, right? And it was just. It was ripe for the picking of innovation and family oriented, and my dad took advantage of those opportunities with great culture of people who love to bring things that they had that they cherish and make them new again as opposed to just going buying new things. Very organic. Portland's still one of the best areas for thrift shopping, for example, right? Because people
yeah,
have that connection to the past, and being able to bring those to life in today's world is still something that interestingly enough Portland has a lot of that vibe, and my dad picked up on that.
yeah. Where do you see the back then versus now as far as customer service, entrepreneurship, things like that? there's a big shift in America now, obviously digitizing everything, digital transformation, things like that. But one thing we're missing is the people, the customer service. I think you and I both have posted things about emails of just terrible emails
Yeah.
for people trying to engage us. What do you think your dad would say back then to what is happening now in America just for business?
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, I love this conversation. By the way, I haven't
Yeah.
had these conversations in a while, and so you're bringing back some memories for me, which are really, really great. But my dad, I remember there were times when he would print these flyers, right? And he
Yeah.
would print them out and talk about why recovering your furniture, to make it new again. Again, I didn't even realize my mantra I've been using is find new ways of doing old things, and he always found, turning old things to new, right? And with furniture, right? And instead of just buying new, you turn your old things to new because there's memories, there's things that are there. He took that and developed kind of the story around that. And he would
Mm.
create these little flyers. And I remember we would go to the Burger King parking lot or the these shopping mall parking lots, and we would just stick these flyers in people's cars, right? I mean, I'm talking about 8, 9, 10 years old, running around doing that. But that was his lead gen, right? In a sense, right? But it
Yeah.
was more than that because his approach was really meaningful and then told a story, right? Back then, people had really, I felt, built a stronger connection with customers or with their audience and trying to attract the right people with what the beliefs that they have. I think today, as technology has continued to improve, people look at analytics and numbers a lot. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, it becomes a numbers game, right? And the numbers game says, go make 100 calls, go do these things, go send 500 emails, get these many opens, these many conversions. And so the numbers game kind of makes you focus on conversion, whatever tactic that's needed, and
Right.
unfortunately it takes away some of the customer and the relationship that is there. Now the ones that do it well are able to incorporate that into their cold outreaches, but as you've seen from some of the stuff that I've shared, it can be very off-putting because and I get it. We do some of these cold emails as well, but we try to make sure that it's adding value to the person and it's a good fit. But when you're playing a numbers game, you know that you're going to hit more bad than you are going to hit good. And if you can get 20%, you can get 30%, 40%, that's the conversion that you're looking for. And that means you're going to throw away a lot of people and turn off a lot of people in the process, right? And so back in the day when customers and audiences were about building connection, today there's a lot of data driven that says, okay, you just need to do it this way. Here are the numbers, here's conversion, and you'll hit your numbers if you follow these methods, right? And I think
Yeah.
that to some extent loses a little bit of that customer-centric approach.
I think it loses a lot. Just from you and I, just from looking at these different posts and what you just described, the way your dad used to do it versus what's happening now. And that's why relationships are becoming more important. I talk about this too. Humanizing your businesses, like you and I are. We're creating context for what we've done in our past, creating a story, right? So that's why I think you're really going to see a story where brands are going to have to become more relatable to create credibility, because all these systems are becoming AI driven based on KPIs, right? Of analytics, right? That we keep talking about, but you're throwing away a massive batch of potential buyers in the future that will never remember you is kind of what I'm thinking about. But if they have that relationship where you may have met them at one time, like you and I have, right? 3 years, 2, 3 years ago when you and I met once, and then we're back again, we're talking again. So very similar. We never burnt the bridge, so to speak, between each other. It was very, streamlined, so to speak. And, here we are again. But I think that's kind of the way the future is heading into. We're not, AI is going to drive us, but then relationships are going to build it and build our businesses more efficiently. If that makes any sense, just stop me if
Yeah.
I keep
No,
going.
no, you're hitting on a lot of great points, right? And
Yeah,
even with the business that I ran, when we were bringing contractors on board, the best contractors were the word of mouth contractors, right? And
yeah,
those word of mouth came from people that saw a lot of value in what they were receiving from our businesses, prior to selling to Service Magic, Home Advisor, or Quinn Street, and it was the ability to service those customers. It was the ability to make sure that they were receiving leads and that they were seeing success. Word of mouth goes a long, long ways. And so,
Yeah.
back in the day when there was no technology or internet, and your only way of advertising was the yellow page books or ads in the classified ads, you had to find better ways to reach your audience. And a lot of that is friends of friends, right? It's a whole
Yeah.
thing where if you treat someone nicely and they have a good experience, they're going to remember that feeling, and they're going to pass it on when they're having a conversation with someone else who has that same pain point or that need. That
Right.
translates today, very, very well, but people take so much advantage of technology that's available now, and the different reach that you have, that it becomes a numbers game to for the most part. And if you go back to the olden days, right, I can say these
Yeah.
are my daughter and her friends, say you grew up in the 1900s, and I'm like, well, yeah, I did. You're 2000s, I'm the 1900s, but 1980s, 1990, you call that the 1900s? That's just weird. Uh,
It is.
but back in those days, right, we didn't have
Yeah.
all this technology. The internet was just beginning, and
Yeah.
so to have word of mouth is still king. Today is still very king, right? And if you have word of mouth, you can go a long ways. But word of mouth doesn't come just because you build a great product and people use it and love it. It's about how they feel, and the relationships that they built with the people that are servicing them, support,
Yeah.
customer success, how they were onboarded, how they're being treated, communication. And so a lot of that still goes such a long ways in how businesses can grow. Building a fan base for
Yeah.
your business, right? Having fans who word of mouth will take you a long ways, and that personal connection, that storytelling that you're talking about, that really is where we are with AirDeck today. Is the same
Yeah.
thing. It's being able to tell your story, being able to pitch it the way that you wanted to pitch in your voice or in your narrative, so that it's not lost in translation, right?
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that it still holds true today, and I think that's where AirDeck comes in to truly try to bridge that gap, so that it's not just all presentations that are sent generically with the text, and you have to jump on a meeting and talk about it. You can tell your story through your presentations that begins to engage your audiences even more. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's going back to what we were talking about before we get to AirDeck postcards. We might have to retract back to the old days, like you were talking about, for building those relationships. I was thinking about postcarding. Some of my potential clients, send them some
yeah,
postcards once in a while. That's a thing that people aren't doing. Thinking outside the box, maybe going back and looking at those type of methods to keep that relationship kind of there, right? I mean, until there's a moment where that purchaser makes their decision, you always want to be that first person they think of. So little things like that, I think we're going to go to. But you've switched to Air Deck, and you've been a part of Air Deck for what, 3 or 4 years now?
yeah, about 3 years.
Okay, 3 years now. What drew you to Air Deck besides what you just said? I'm curious because there had to be something else other than how it's going to simplify a lot of things for people. But what drew you to it?
Yeah, for me, it's about innovation, right? And
Yeah.
innovation for me is finding new ways of doing old things again. Like it's a mantra, I'll repeat it forever because it's really the way my life has transpired, right? Where people found contractors in yellow pages back in the day. Now they can find them online in Google search and directories and online that are really focused on reviews, right?
Yeah.
Innovation with AirDeck began, in 2020, where I met the original founder Jason Weaver, and he wanted a solution that could help him, not have to go through so many meetings just to listen to a pitch deck or to send an investor deck, right? And also, he wanted to make sure that things weren't getting lost in translation. So, he started developing a business, and we were friends from 10, 12 years ago, where he was working on his previous business, and so he picked my brain on certain things. I watched him kind of grow with AirDeck, and once he raised some capital, I was like, this is very, very interesting, because you're revolutionizing the way that we communicate, right? You're in a way that's asynchronous, that doesn't require you to jump on a meeting all the time and have to go over things in detail, right?
Yeah.
What really stood out to me was the ability to save time, and really innovate in a space that was pretty new at that time, right?
Yeah.
And this is prior to the pandemic, so the pandemic just started to happen at that time. And forcing people to go remotely. Zoom calls became the thing, right? People were doing everything remotely, having these webinars, having these meetings, going over content. And so we kind of hit that stride at the exact same time when it
Yeah.
came to being able to share content and communication remotely. So that really drew me. I felt like this is $1 billion idea, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
how can I help make this grow as a chief marketing officer for AirDeck? And eventually we hit some some milestones as well as some challenges, and I took over as CEO after putting some money in as well, and then raised an additional round to take this further than to reach its full potential.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those pain points while we got some time here. So obviously, digital transformation is really where you guys are succeeding as far as pitch decks. And I've used your platform before, and it's amazing. I can tell you that. One of the coolest parts about it is being able to follow where the pitch deck goes. And that I thought was cool, because then you kind of know if you're really being successful in your deck or you're not. Because if people aren't sharing it, you probably should go back and start reevaluating your pitch deck. Because if it's good, people are going to share it. That's kind of the way I thought about it. And it sounds like you also have added a form now. It's something I haven't tried yet, but the PDFs you can upload, but add your face to it and add some, you just like this, like a short clip to it, and talk about the PDF. Is that everything that I'm kind of describing of AirDeck?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head here. AirDeck is really, imagine sending any type of presentation or document and having to write an email description to explain what you're seeing, or
Yeah,
jam pack the content in there so it explains everything, or leave it high level and try to schedule a meeting just so you can go and explain it to them, right?
yeah,
Imagine being able to just narrate that presentation or document ahead of time. And
love
when you
it.
send it out, that person's receiving it in your voice with your face, potentially, if you want to add video to it. But you're walking them through, you're talking about things, you're using a laser pointer to point out specific areas of what you're talking about. And then what you talked about, which is the sharing and the resharing, again, we track all that, all the document tracking, where it's shared, who to share to, when they open, how long they engage. But that sharing allows that information and that narration to move with it, right? So
Yeah,
now you created a deck that you've narrated, you've shared it to some company, and they're sharing it to another company. Well, are you going to rely on them to tell your story for you, or can you make sure that the narration you provided is carried along with it? And that's where I think the power is really coming through, is
yeah,
especially with entrepreneurs who are sending out their pitch decks or sending out investor decks. They have a certain story that they're telling, and they're using their narrative to tell it. And when they can narrate that and perfect that copy, it translates and it moves on, and you can track it, see who opens it, what people are engaging on. You can update your deck,
yeah,
consolidate it. And yeah, we've introduced a lot of new features, including forms and deck surveys within the platform that you can ask customers, lead gen that you can do within the AirDeck now. A lot of different features that are really taken beyond, and you can embed these air decks onto your website, right? And so you can see where everyone's opening it from and where they're watching it from, and collect data on those things that can help drive your business, even to make better decisions. So again, your story needs to be told by you and your narrative, and air deck helps you do that.
you just gave me chills, because one of the other things, well, it's a huge pain point for everybody, because I recently was using another platform. I'm not sure if I can mention names without getting in trouble these days. But the form, like, to record a deck and just sit there and go through slide after slide after slide without being, you can't stop, right? Or you got to pause, or something like that. What I found interesting with AirDeck was the ability to stop at each slide, record it, and then move on to the next one without having to, like, you know what I mean, try and work through the whole flow of it and try and keep the story moving, which, everybody wants. But if you mess up one little word, or mess up one little, just a little uns, and those things that you put in there, you're like thinking in your head, you totally can throw your deck off completely if it's one solid presentation. So the great thing about AirDeck is being able to individualize those slides, and put directly the content, the description of the content on the slide that you're describing in one time, and keep moving forward through each slide. Hopefully I described that because that's the way I kind of envisioned it, because I just did it. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, absolutely. You nailed it again, right? I mean, you're using it the way that our customers love to use it as well, right? There are other platforms that you can record a walkthrough of your presentation, but it is one long video, right? And so,
Right.
by breaking it down slide by slide, it makes it easier for you to replace, change. We have a company or several companies that are using it to, send out product updates, right, to their product, and they're sending out onboarding materials for their product, and they're constantly innovating, so their product is changing all the time. And so
Yeah.
to be able to go to a certain slide, make an update to the visual, narrate it differently, but the rest of the deck is the same, gives them that flexibility. They can easily swap out their onboarding materials, their help knowledge based materials, really really easily by just updating rather than re-recording the entire thing to walk through how to do certain things in your platform. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a scalable solution that we're seeing a lot of customers build their content library of pre-narrated content that really allows them to put together the pieces that matter most to the different viewers and personalize each of these. You can create a deck and personalize it with your own narrative, like, hey Chad, I wanted to send you this deck with this information that I put together, take a look at it, but you don't have to narrate the rest of that. That's all pre-narrated, and you can add the slides that are relevant to them, and then if something changes down the road, you can update it on the back end, and it automatically update because it's a link. So
Yeah.
that's the powerful part of that ability to do slide by slide narration as well as analytics that comes with that.
Yeah, thinking about infrastructure and communities and things like I talk about mostly, your platform could really help the engineering firms get their message across through like RFP processes and things like that that they have to submit to those government buyers. That's one thing you and I have been talking about. So that's one thing for anybody listening that is an engineer looking to get their projects kind of streamline and explain them. The AirDeck's going to be your solution for that for sure. So we're out of time, Jack, and I think we could talk about a lot more things. But what does the future of AirDeck look like?
Yeah, so with AirDeck over the next several months here and several years, I'm hoping to turn this into a global organization that really bridges the gap in communication on a global level, right? And have a borderless world where we can communicate across the world, information. I want to be able to add AI into this for translations, into different ways to multilingual approaches to creating a deck that you're telling your story in English that can also be translated easily into German or French or Spanish, right? These are some of those technology that we're working on. But we're working on growing and relaunching AirDeck, because I think some of the things that we had before for what AirDeck was has changed a lot because of coming out of the pandemic and realize there is a hybrid workforce now. It's really not just about doing everything virtually. It's about saving time and doing things effectively, efficiently, and being able to scale your business and your content with how you create that. So AirDeck, we're going to be shooting for the stars and probably be looking to raise some capital here in the next year to really accelerate that growth. But we're in a good position right now to really continue to take care of our customers, build a great business with great employees, and really take this to the next level.
Well, Jack, it's amazing what you have going on in the future of AirDeck. It sounds like you are really just a game changer in any digital communication as far as when it comes to PDFs, slide decks, things like that. And I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm missing out on. So all those things that you're going to be doing. But one way, how can people get a hold of you, Jack? What's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, airdeck.co is our website. You can obviously find us there. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack Phan, Instagram, all my socials are at Jack Phan, JCKPHAN. And if you need to reach me at AirDeck, and my email is actually just jack@airdeck.co. So feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to give you a demo, walk you through the product, and you can easily sign up for a free trial of AirDeck or the free account to just get started and get to see what the value of being able to add narration on top of any of your documents or presentations.
Love it, Jack. You're an amazing man, and your history and your family's history coming to America and just being the entrepreneur dream and succeeding is really motivational to I think everybody. So thank you for sharing your story and stuff. It's hard to do, but it's amazing to hear. That's for
I
sure.
appreciate it, and I appreciate you having me on here and allowing me to share the stories with everyone in your audience.
Yeah, man. Anytime, anytime. I'm sure we got more to talk about, but thank you for being here, and you have a great day.
All right, thanks, Chad.